Find where playtime, learning, and creating collide bit by bit on the AI for Kids podcast. Ever wonder how your phone recognizes your face or why robots can talk? They've got the answers. Dive into the magical world of artificial intelligence. From cool interviews and fun stories to hands-on experiments, the AI for Kids podcast makes the complex world of AI easy to understand and exciting. Designed for curious kids and their parents, explore how AI shapes our world and even how you can be part of this incredible journey. Ready to unlock the mysteries of AI? Subscribe to AI for Kids podcast wherever you get your shows. The future is yours to create. New this year at a lot of schools, including my own son's, is an attempt to keep smartphones out of the school day. Our school says it interferes with student interaction. I asked my son about the new policy, and he said he hadn't noticed students ignoring each other because of their phones, but honestly, he might not have noticed because he was looking down at his own phone. So we'll see what happens this year, and I'm going to cover that soon. Today, I want to cover two other controversies that finally have some data to guide us about what is healthy for our kids. I'm talking about what time school starts and how that affects our kids' health and well-being. I mean, I don't want to start work at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd love some data to support that my day should start at 9. So please, somebody consider getting a grant to work on that. Okay, the other thing I'm talking about is lockdown drills in schools. We actually do those in my office too, and it makes me a bit anxious when we do them. So what effect do they have on young kids? Listen on and find out the surprising answer. I'm Dr. Wendy Hunter, and I'm the pediatrician next door. I'm that doctor friend you call for practical advice about your kids' health. I mix the science of medicine with the reality of parenting. In this current political climate, one of the most interesting things to me as a parent is that both California and Florida passed laws that require all public schools to have later start times, which is crazy that these two states agree. Don't they hate each other? California's law is the first in the nation to require that high school classes start at 8:30 a.m. or later and middle schools after 8. Florida overwhelmingly passed a law last year with similar requirements that schools have to meet by July 2026. So we have finally found a true bipartisan issue. I mean, when have California and Florida ever agreed on anything? However, the issue is still controversial, of course. It cannot be disputed that later start times are healthier for kids. And I'm going to share the research with you in just a minute. But with later start times comes a ripple of consequences like disrupting after-school activities and complicating bus schedules. School districts share buses between elementary, middle, and high schools, so they have to stagger their start times. 25 other states have proposed bills to push back school start times, but all of those bills have failed, and it's mostly an issue of cost. When the number crunchers evaluate changing the school start times, they see it's going to cost the districts more, and so they decide that our kids' improvement in health is not worth the cost. That's why they need to be convinced of how much of a difference it will make on our kids' health, and this is going to surprise you. People who vote get very upset when crowded school crosswalks and school bus stops get in the way of their commute. And parents, they worry about it changing their workday. The only way we can convince people who can do anything about it is to show how much kids' sleep matters for their health. Listen, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 individual school districts across the country have changed their start times to later, according to Kyla Wahlstrom, one of the leading experts on adolescent sleep patterns. She's a faculty member at the University of Minnesota. Here, she explains kids' sleep and the ideal start times for elementary, middle, and high schools.
Teens are unable to really wake up and be fully functioning before 8:30 in the morning. And in fact, we do know that 20 to 25% of all teenagers, if their school starts early, will be sleeping at their desks in their first hour of class. So the ideal start time for high schools is 8:30, middle school is 8 o'clock. And then when we look at elementary students have a very flexible sleep schedule. It's quite different than that of an adolescent. And so with an elementary age student and their flexibility, schools can start actually earlier than often they do. And they can start before the high schools at 8 or 8:30 to accommodate busing schedules and so on. Elementary students just need between 9 and 11 hours of sleep every night. And it just depends on when the parents put them to bed. If they get their full amount of sleep and they're able to get up and be starting school at 7:45, 8 o'clock.
Since there is this biological difference in the sleep patterns for kids of different ages, school districts can still stagger the start times. They just need to make the high school start the latest. And this is a good strategy because teens really can't focus well early in the morning. I mean, didn't you fall asleep in your classes, remember? Maybe you've noticed this in your own family too. Why do teens have a hard time feeling awake before 8 a.m.?
Teenagers have, during their adolescent period, a shift in their brain that is called a circadian phase delay shift, or just a sleep delay shift, that is biologically determined. And it's universally true for all teenagers as they go through their adolescence. And so the biological reasons for this shift have to do with how the body matures until it reaches about age 19. And then it will shift back to what the person was pre-teenage and into and through adulthood. So we all have genetically predetermined sleep-wake cycles and preferences. But during the teenage years, all teenagers have this shift in their brain that causes them to not feel sleepy until about 10:45 or 11 at night. And they don't really fully awake. The brain doesn't wake up until about 8 in the morning.
If you have a teen, I know you want them to go to bed earlier, but they really do have a sleep phase delay, and many aren't tired until a little bit later than younger kids or adults. If they have a delay in their sleep phases, does that change how much sleep they need?
Teenagers optimally should be getting 9 hours and 15 minutes every night. Every night, that includes weekends. The lowest amount, the tipping point amount, is 8 hours per night. And anything less than 8 hours is into the danger zone. And it significantly causes negative outcomes when you have less than 8 hours per night. It's interesting. I think sometimes both parents and teens think that they can just catch up on their sleep on the weekend. That is a total false assumption, because it's sort of like if sleep is food for the brain, which I believe it is, it's like, okay, we're going to deprive ourselves of adequate food 3 days out of the week, but then we're going to gorge on food on the weekend. That's not healthy. And neither is getting less than 8 hours of sleep average every night, because that's what keeps the body fueled and the brain operating at optimum capacity when the student, gets 8 hours minimum of sleep every night.
Schools have been forcing teens into a biologically unnatural pattern since the invention of school. What consequences does this have? How does school start times affect teens? What happens when a teen goes to bed when they're naturally tired, but they still have to get up early for school?
Any teen that's getting less than 8 hours of sleep per night is at risk for the following kinds of negative outcomes that we have documented as to be true for a student getting less than 8 hours. For instance, we do know that there is greater use of drugs, cigarettes, alcohol when a teen is getting less than 8 hours. We also know that there is a significant link between teenage depression and any sleep amount that is less than 8 hours. So we have depression, physical health, mental health, and then of course the safety issues have to do with their driving ability. They're inexperienced drivers when you have a 16-year-old behind the wheel of a car, and their decision-making and their reflexes are severely affected by a lack of sleep. So the teenagers that are sleep deprived are much more statistically significantly likely to be in a car crash, to make poor decisions, to even run into us on the road. So it's pretty serious outcome when you don't have enough sleep in your teenage child. The other thing has to do with academics, and the academics are related to what we know through cognitive science and memory building. And during the nighttime hours, all of the information that a student would be learning during the day is cataloged by the brain into various file folders, I would call it, just as a way to organize the information. And so when a child or a student has adequate sleep, the amount of things that are remembered for academic reasons are greatly enhanced, and the students then do better academically. On the other hand, when you have a sleep-deprived student, they often don't have the amount of sleep that would allow them to fully categorize all of their memories and their learning. And as a consequence, it affects their grades. So we know statistically that academic performance is enhanced and, in fact, achieved at best levels when the student gets 8 or more hours of sleep every night.
So the time that teens start school affects their physical and mental health, their safety and our safety, and their academic performance. And it also affects their relationships with parents and their families. Kyla Wahlstrom explains what her research has uncovered.
We have surveyed parents, and in all of our surveys, more than 92% of the parents responded to say that their teenager was easier to live with after the later starting time. Many parents have anecdotally told me that their child is a different child. They are able to speak with them at breakfast. They are chatty in the car. They don't have moody episodes and fly off the handle. The parents are just saying it's remarkable that this has made such a change in their child's life and their family dynamics as a result of having adequate sleep. So the outcome with the families is also equally important.
Most schools across the country still start earlier than doctors and scientists recommend. If your school day starts early, how can parents help their kids get enough sleep?
Parents play an important role in their child, their teenager's sleep cycle and their ability to fall asleep. A couple of things that are really important. And one has to do with the parents' control, if you want to use that word, control over the child's cell phone use. Cell phones in the bedroom have been incredibly detrimental to teens' sleep. When they're doing social media during the night, if they use the phone for an alarm, those kinds of things are going to cause the brain to wake up and the child will be unable to fall back asleep. So the parent and the family is best off if they just take the cell phones, everybody's cell phones, goes into the kitchen to a charging station, and it spends the night there. And then the child can wake up without having being interrupted during their sleep time. The other thing that's really important is parents need to be educated themselves about their teenagers' sleep patterns, sleep cycle. When you think about it, parents of an infant, they know a lot about what's going on with their child's development and their child's sleep-wake cycles, and they talk to their pediatrician about how that all develops over time. But often parents of teenagers don't know about the sleep-wake cycle of teenagers and how that is universally a developmental stage, that these teenagers can't fall asleep much before 11, and they don't wake up until about 8 in the morning.
If you would like information to share with your local school, check out the nonprofit Start School Later at startschoollater.net. Next, we're going to wade through another controversy, lockdown drills. What do you know about how they affect kids? You're going to be surprised to hear the truth. Nearly 1 in 3 kids deal with constipation and pooping problems. Their little guts are overwhelmed by factors like poor diets and antibiotic overuse. One of the best ways to help support digestion and their immune system is by adding prebiotics to their daily routine. Did you know that 70 to 80% of our immune cells live in the gut? A happy gut means a healthy kid, and prebiotics help feed and increase good gut bacteria in your kiddo's microbiome. In partnership with nutrition scientists and pediatricians, Begin Health created daily growing up prebiotics. It's the perfect prebiotic with 3 grams of fiber in every serving to support smoother and softer number 2s, so potty time is smoother for the whole family. My patients tell me they love this tasteless and textureless powder because it mixes into their kids' favorite drink or food, making it easy to give to even picky eaters. Visit beginhealth.com today and get 25% off your order with my promo code NEXTDOOR, NEXTDOOR. Predictable potty time and the perfect poop is possible with Begin Health Daily Growing Up Prebiotics. If you've thought much about school drills, you'll notice that people often use the phrase active shooter drill and lockdown drill interchangeably, but these aren't the same. I have also always thought that these drills were harmful to kids and not effective. I've seen headlines about them in big-name magazines and newspapers, but then I heard scientists talk about this issue. Drills in schools that use fake blood or shot at kids with blanks made the news because they were bizarre outliers. It's the rare school that is crazy enough to do things like this, and they make the news because it's shocking. I know parents worry that lockdown drills can cause anxiety, stress, and depression in students and can even be traumatizing. And they worry that unannounced drills can lead to panic and confusion. You may be concerned about exposing children to the harsh realities of violence at a young age, too, and rightfully so. But there's another side to this. Practicing lockdown drills, not active shooter drills, is a way to get kids ready for something that might be scary, and it can actually be a good experience. When kids know what to do in a situation that might be frightening, they feel more in control. They feel like they know what's going on, and that makes them feel safer because they know their teachers have a plan. Dr. Amanda Nickerson, a professor and director of the Alberti Center for Bullying Abuse Prevention at the University of Buffalo, explains what her research and those of her colleagues has found.
We've also found that students report lowered fear of harm and also lower perceived risk. Somewhat surprising and a big passion and interest of mine has been in the two studies that I've done that's looked explicitly at anxiety. One was done several years ago where we compared lockdown drills to a control condition and found that there were no differences between those two groups in terms of anxiety. And our more recent work in another smaller district has found that high school students actually reported reduced anxiety after the drills as compared to baseline or the 2 weeks preceding the drills.
The most recent research, some of which hasn't even been published yet, shows that when these drills are done in a particular way, they can be beneficial. So what is the right way to do them? Dr. Nickerson explains.
How do lockdown drills work? The work that my colleague, Dr. Jacqueline Schilkraut, and I have been working on is using the standard response protocol from the I Love You Guys Foundation, which is considered a best practice model. And the steps are quite simple in that it is lockdown, which means locking of the classroom doors, turning out the lights, and getting everyone out of sight from the hallway corridor and making sure that they are quiet. And always announcing this is a drill. So this may be in contrast to some of the protocols that have made national news where there are sensorial techniques, fake blood, actors, kids throwing things at possible intruders. This is one of a set of standard strategies, including evacuation and others that schools can use in the event that there is any type of threat, including a shooter in a school.
Here is one of the important points to make, that this isn't a drill just for a school shooter, it's for any threat. Lockdowns are used anytime there are potential threats inside the building, like angry parents, angry students, or wild animals. And the drills help kids prepare for and practice a strategy that will maintain distance between them and that threat. Those are the steps your school should be taking. They should train the teachers and students to lock the doors, get the lights off, get out of sight, and stay quiet. Nobody should be pretending to break in or using the word shooter or talking about guns at all. It might not be a bad idea to practice this at home as well. I like the wild animal drill. I mean, we have scorpions in our house, but turning off the lights actually makes them come out, so maybe not a good idea. My point is that if your kids ask, be honest with them about the fact that it's very unlikely a stranger is going to come into their school to hurt them, but we still have to have a plan just in case. We want to explain that their teachers and the students are in control of their school. Just like we have plans for snow days, earthquakes, or storms, we have a plan for what to do if someone who doesn't belong comes into the school, like a bear or an antelope. Practicing these drills is important too. Lockdown drills became popular after the 1999 Columbine shooting. The school went into lockdown, and the report about what happened that day showed that the shooters never entered a locked room or killed anyone who was in one. There have only been 4 school shootings in which shooters have killed students who were behind locked doors, and the shooter didn't actually get past the locked door. In a shooting in 2005 and in the 2018 Parkland shooting, shots went through the windows and hit students who were not out of sight. We know from past shootings that locked doors keep kids safe, especially when they're able to get out of sight. There isn't any published data about whether lockdown drills save lives, but Dr. Nickerson did share data that has not yet been published and shows that these drills are helpful.
Our collaborative work with Emily Green Colosi has found that the implementation of lockdown procedures has actually saved lives in real events. And this is done by coding of actual mass shootings in schools where lockdowns were used. It reduced fatalities by 63%.
This is quite a grim topic to discuss, even though it may be something that crosses your mind as a parent from time to time and makes us feel a little helpless. Plus, hearing about our kids participating in these drills is almost just as scary. But not talking about these things isn't a good idea because avoiding the topic can make kids even more anxious. If there are kids who are really worried about something like a school shooting, not discussing it only makes their anxiety worse. So it's better to talk about it openly. These drills can also help us notice which kids might be more anxious than we realize. We can talk to them more and find out what they're worried about. We can reassure them by talking about how unlikely it is that something bad will happen and explaining all the safety measures that we have in place. When talking to kids, use your common sense. Don't use confusing words or phrases because that can make them imagine things that are worse than reality. But also, don't describe things in a way that's too scary. It really is about finding the right balance. You might try saying something like, if someone wanted to hurt our school, students, or teachers, we would not let that happen. We have a plan to prevent it. The way you say this matters. We're being extra careful, and with your school's plan, I know we'll all stay safe. How can you approach your school to get more information? You can start by asking specific questions about how their drills are done. The National Association of School Psychologists, the National Association of School Resource Officers, and Safe and Sound Schools organization have partnered to make guidance on best practices for school crisis drills. So you can ask your schools if they're doing these things or point them to this guidance. First, research supports the effectiveness of non-sensorial lockdown drills. So what you want to do is do a drill by calmly walking and talking through the procedures with no simulation of a real-life event. Next, all participants should know ahead of time that the drill will take place and what to expect, including what announcement will be made or what bell will sound to start the drill. What else do you need to do? Okay, effective drills include the presence of staff who inspire calm and confidence in students. Then, participation should never be required. You need to get parental consent before you do the drill, and alternative methods to teach these skills should also be provided. Schools should consider factors like the developmental maturity, psychological history, prior traumatic experiences, personality, and the special needs of their students. And there should always be a school-employed mental health professional involved in every stage of preparing for these drills. I hope this information is helpful to guide you to be more knowledgeable as you make your way through the school years. There's always going to be a new controversy, and the truth is that your involvement with your school matters. It can be hard to know what is right, and oftentimes we're guided by our gut feeling, but in the case of school start times and lockdown drills, there is good information to guide us now, so share this with your community. A great way to do that is to share this episode, and check the show notes for the resources I mentioned. For more from the Pediatrician Next Door, find me on the web at pediatriciannextdoorpodcast.com. If you've got a question about the weird things kids do, send an email to hello@pediatriciannextdoorpodcast.com for a chance to hear your voice on the show. I'm Dr. Wendy Hunter, and I'm the pediatrician next door. This show is produced by Red Rock Music. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever it is you're listening. I'll be back next time with more.